Welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is Becca Desai, and on behalf of Faith Communities Go Green, I welcome all of you. FCGG is a collaboration of Equation and Green Umbrella. Our mission is to partner with religious communities to create a more sustainable and equitable future for everyone by mobilizing our moral voices to reduce the risk of catastrophic climate change. And our vision is to get all the religious communities in our region to collaborate to integrate care for creation in our lives and in our society. Once again, I would request everyone to please keep their microphones muted. Faith Communities Go Green has 4 working groups. The Facilities Working Group helps houses of worship in the greater Cincinnati region become greener, and their work includes increasing the energy efficiency of the houses of worship. The Advocacy Working Group advocates for environmentally sound and fair legislation. The Membership Working Group works on enrolling more volunteers who are passionate about our planet's health and ensures that all members have a fulfilling experience with FCGG. And the Education and Lifestyles Working Group, which I lead, educates through a variety of programs and inspires community members to adopt an eco-friendly lifestyle, one step at a time. Today's program is organized by our Education Lifestyles Working Group, and the topic of today's program is Climate Change, a Spiritual Awakening. Is our conscience happy with our choices? For many of us, it may be true that our conscience is not happy with our current choices regarding climate action. This could be because a significant gap exists between our values and our actions. For many of us, our concern for the environment is high, but our daily behaviors, like when you're traveling, flying, or driving, the diet that we eat every day, often fall short of sustainable ideals. This conflict causes an unhappy conscience, often manifesting as eco-guilt, eco-anxiety, or eco-paralysis. However, this internal discomfort can be a catalyst, a powerful catalyst for better choices, provided it is managed constructively. I'm looking forward to talking with our guest Bob Geddert today on this topic. Bob, it is great to have you back with us. Although many people know who you are, I'd still like to introduce you for the sake of those in the audience who may not know you. Let me pin you so people can see you properly. Bob Geddert is one of the thought leaders of the U.S. recycling and zero waste movements. He is grounded by his practical experience working for the state government in Indiana, local governments in Fresno, California, and Austin, Texas, as executive director of the California Resource Recovery Association, and as a consultant to major cities throughout the country, including New York City and Boston. In his latest book, Untangling Plastics, Bob provides an essential public policy perspective on plastics. In this book, he offers real solutions for how we can adopt greener ways of living and phase out plastics. But how did Bob get to be here where he is today? A champion on protecting our planet and the environment? It all stems from his deep love for nature and how he stays connected with it. Beginning with his early childhood days when he would visit his grandfather, who he calls his hero, and who was a family farmer in northwest Ohio. Bob's grandfather cared for the land he farmed through rotation of crops, thus protecting the soil from depletion. In his book Untangling Plastics, in chapter 1, titled No Harm, he talks about his time at the farm and his grandfather, and I quote, Bob says, "As we worked the land and reaped what we sowed, he taught me that plants will grow when cared for and nurtured." Can you all see me and hear me?
Difficulties here. Can everybody hear? Are we still good here? I think Becca's having some difficulties there. I'd like to start and go ahead.
No, Bob,
She,
I'm here.
you are.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I'm
Becca.
I'm here. So I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. We have a high-speed internet, but I'm going to just continue with what I was telling you about how Bob got to be where he is in life today. The champion of environmental work, and everything he does in his life is connected with taking care of the planet. Bob says that he was very inspired by his grandfather, and I was quoting what he wrote in the book. That, uh, and he writes that as we worked the land and reaped what we sowed, he taught me that plants will grow when cared for and nurtured. He taught me that nature's growth depends on each generation's care of nature's development and our care for Earth as our collective home. Unquote. Bob, there is so much innocence in this first chapter of your book, and so heartwarming to read how your family values are aligned with your life's actions for our planet. I also wanted to let the audience know that right now, currently, Bob serves as an adjunct professor at Xavier University in Cincinnati, teaching climate change. He's married to his college sweetheart, Kathy, and his greatest pleasure in life is watching his 3 children and 2 grandchildren making a difference in their communities. He enjoys taking walks in the local parks with his wife. Bob, it is truly our honor once again to have you here with us today. Welcome to our program, and thank you for being willing to share your wisdom and knowledge with us today. I have a few questions that I have listed to ask you, Bob, that are related to this topic of the day. and I'll just go over my questions at once and then you can respond to them. About climate crisis, many people often deny or ignore what science tells us. How do we overcome this inner denial and align our consumer habits with our deeper spiritual values? Why is it that our conscience often feels more at peace with convenience rather than with the sacred? How do we realign our inner values to make sustainable living feel like a joy rather than a chore? If we truly treated Earth as a sacred place rather than a resource to be exploited, what would our day to day choices look like? When our environmental actions are driven by spiritual values rather than guilt, how does that change the stamina of our activism? How does the process of spiritual awakening, which often involves a shrinking of the ego, directly translate into a smaller ecological footprint? How do we move from ego consciousness to eco consciousness? And finally, Bob, my last question is, what practices can you suggest which can help us bridge this gap between knowing what is right for the planet and actually doing it in our daily lives? You can take it from here, Bob, and we all look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you for the wonderful introduction and the questions. And Becca shared with me these questions earlier, so they're built into my PowerPoint. I would like to address each of those questions in certain slides on the PowerPoint. I have a presentation to present, but I do want to build in a question and answer period at the conclusion of the PowerPoint. Make sure that we get your questions addressed. That's the favorite part for me. The PowerPoint presentation was partly generated from a class that I teach at Xavier on climate change. There's a single class that out of a full 16-week course where I talk about a spiritual awakening. And so part of the content comes from that. And part of the content comes from and is inspired by my conversations with Becca. And we prepared collectively together for this presentation. So I do want to thank Becca for her help there. And partly some reflections from my book are in this presentation as well too, as Becca had mentioned. I'd like to get started and with the presentation. Before I move on, I in every presentation that I do, I pay respects to our ancestors and those that have come before us that have taught us enriching values and my grandfather being one of them, as Becca mentioned. And I also pay respects to the indigenous cultures of our past as well. And we learn a lot about our respect for our creation through our indigenous cultures that hopefully are not forgotten. So in proceeding from there, um, I start with the problem, as we say, the climate crisis. And this is something that I do teach on, and we all experience, all of us on this webinar. Um, the climate crisis is very urgent crisis, dangerous and accelerating disruption of the Earth's climate system. And it is affecting weather, atmosphere, oceans, polar caps, plants, animals, humans, all of creation is affected by this climate crisis. It's caused primarily by human activities, such as burning fossil fuels, which release greenhouse gases. And fossil fuels are defined as coal, oil, and gas, and are by far the largest contributor to global climate change, accounting for 90% of all carbon dioxide emissions. So we can see what's generating the problem there. Some of the impacts of climate change In the last 11 years, we've recorded the hottest 11 years in recorded weather history. We also have extreme weather, increased frequency, intensity of droughts, wildfires, heat waves, floods, impacting millions and costing billions. We just witnessed recently some major flooding in Hawaii from very unusual rainstorms. And we in Cincinnati, greater Cincinnati area, we encounter some extreme weather that we did not encounter years ago. The climate change crisis also impacts the ice and the melting of the ice and the sea level rise. And all the coastal areas around the world, including islands, are now threatened by the rising sea levels. Um, and what I'll be talking about to a great deal today is the ecological and social damage that climate crisis offers us. We have the loss of biodiversity, food and water insecurity, and infrastructure destruction. But beyond those points, there is a need for a spiritual awakening on the ecological side there. Um, this climate crisis impacts us in many, many ways, and each of us are reacting um, in what I call an eco grief mode of thinking. We feel grief and loss of creation as we walk through this journey. We feel helpless and angry. We often feel directionless. We feel helpless. And what can we do? We feel separated from others when we need to work together collectively. We feel isolated and alone. We feel we cannot make a difference. We can make a difference, but we feel that we can't. And we often wander aimlessly through the crisis management mode of thinking. Um, so, what I bring to you is a few thoughts on how we can address that, the climate crisis, and how we collectively and individually are at a threshold. Think about a threshold of a door as a metaphor. And the lemon, the in between space of the doorway, we think of the threshold as the base on the floor, but the lemon is the in between space from floor to ceiling between the doorway. Say, think about your front door and your storm door, and there's a space in there. The liminality it comes from that root word and reflects our uncomfortable feeling of ambiguity while standing in the middle of a juncture of significant change. Um, Joyce Ruff, who wrote the book Open Door, notes that when one door closes, another opens. We have a closing door, we have a door that we can open. And so I asked the questions, what suffering do I fear as the door closes? And what new horizons can we experience when another door opens? Thoughts for you to ponder there. Some of our faith-based religions have responses to the climate change. I note 7 of them on these 2 slides, but there are many more. There are many, many more responses that we can rely on. The Catholic Laudato Si on care of our home, United Methodist climate change and the church's response, Lutheran God's work, our hands caring for creation today, the Muslim Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change, and that's a great document. It's very readable. The Jewish Resolution on Addressing the Impacts of Climate Change, Buddhist Declaration on Climate Change, and Hindu Declaration on Climate Change. And like I said, this is a sampling of the faith-based declarations on climate change, but they empower us towards action if you reach out for the one that reflects your faith. Um, all of these documents talk about care for God's creation. All of them do. And so diving into the thought of eco grief and how we can start working on a spiritual awakening of this crisis. Inner and outer reflections. is a good beginning point. The environmental crisis mirrors an inner spiritual one, revealing our collective disconnect from the earth. We've been taught over the last century that humans, are separate from nature, and yet um, we need healing of our inner selves that fosters the healing of the planet, and learning that we are all interconnected there. um, the mistaken identity that as consumers, we see ourselves as separate consumers, but an awakening reveals our true identity as part of a living planet, transforming our destructive habits of consumerism into interconnectedness. And that's a theme I wish to overemphasize, is our interconnectedness, which we have forgotten in many ways in our society. And mindfulness and presence, mindful awareness, gratitude, and accepting suffering, equal to grief, bring us to spiritual and ecological engagement. From our conscience and choices, there is a call to action, and we need to start awakening our conscience. This crisis prompts us to reckon with our past actions that have caused this crisis, and as our actions impact the earth and the poor. Moving beyond technology, and we recognize that technology is helpful to us, but it can also be destructive. And a deeper spiritual shift is needed for unity, cooperation, and self-discipline required to transition away from fossil fuels. So the focus here is addressing the fossil fuels that are causing the climate crisis here. And finally here, love, not fear. The path forward involves moving from a fear-based reaction, like eco-anxiety, which I do experience here and there, and to a love-driven choices, fostering interconnectedness, trust, and collective responsibility. The path forward. We can embrace this grief at the beginning of our journey here. Acknowledging sorrow for the earth can open us to deeper understanding and shared purpose, and away from our private despair. We need to embrace new ethics and systems. This awakening demands ethical systems that prioritize ecological wisdom over economic growth, integrating science with indigenous and spiritual knowledge. Not to forget our past, because our past has some wisdom. Collective responsibility. We're not individuals in this journey. We recognize our shared role as co-creators, which fosters a collective consciousness that contributes to a greater transformation. So diving into some of Becca's questions, and the next series of slides are addressing her questions that she poses. Why is it that our conscious often feels more at peace with convenience than the sacred? And convenience culture was introduced in 1946 at the end of World War II, and really blossomed out in the 60s and 70s. And we still experience the convenient culture of disposables in our lifestyles today. Current American culture feeds on this convenience. There's an economic churning for use it once and dispose of it, which is part of a pattern of abuse of our earth. And our conscious choice can be to act more sustainably. It takes a choice at our end. And climate change acts as a profound spiritual challenge to us. It's pushing humanity to evolve in its consciousness, and away from this convenience culture, align our actions with core values, and foster a deep interconnected love for the planet. That's the challenge there. Question: How do we realign our inner values to make sustainable living feel like a joy rather than a chore? And I very much like this question. And part of that answer is redefining our life values by intention, by our intent. Do we wish to live in a more ecological manner? And that takes intent and a redefinition of our life values. Live intentionally, work through reflection, meditation, and then action, as I recommend there. Um, Question, if we truly treated our Mother Earth as a sacred space rather than a resource to be exploited, what would our day-to-day choices look like? And it would, instead of choosing the most convenient and disposable way to live, um, and to live in isolation, we choose life-giving actions and lifestyles. We express gratitude, the art of giving thanks. That's something that is very helpful in our daily change in redefining our life values. Um, Question, how does the process of spiritual awakening, which often refers, which often involves a shrinking of the ego, directly translate into a smaller ecological footprint? Um, and taking the ego out of our lifestyles and putting in ECO, into our life cycles, we would have less consumption, which offers simpler lifestyles, less taking away some of the complexities of life. There is less pollution that offers healthier lives. And pollution is a repressive element in our lives here. And an awareness of creation offers interconnectedness. I bring that up repeatedly because that's what's tying us together here. Question, how do we move from ego consciousness dominating nature to eco consciousness, feeling connected to nature? And as I brought up earlier, we are all part of creation. We're all part of God's plan, and therefore the separation of the human from nature is part of the major part of this problem that we're experiencing. And we need to put climate actions front and center, addressing the climate immediately. It's an emergency that we address the climate and listen to your heart. Be creation friendly um, with your heart there. A question of what specific spiritual practices do you think can help us stay rooted and rising in the face of climate devastation? And what I offer, there are many answers to that question, but what I offer is a daily examine prayer that I try to um, walk through each evening as I go to bed. Um, the first element is to thank God for creation, just simply an appreciation and a thank you. Um, the second is to ask for grace to see creation as God sees it, not as how we humans see it, but to ask, how does God see creation? And that helps us in our actions. Um, Third, look closely at my life choices and their impacts. That's pointing the finger at myself and saying, oh, I don't have the proper life choices. Maybe my meal choices could be better. My impact on the climate could be lessened in some of my actions. Um, Ask for conversion toward ecological justice and reconciliation. Two key words there: justice and reconciliation. Um, so it's a request to our God for conversion, and reconcile my relationship with God, creation, and humanity. Um, Reconciling the differences and asking that asking for that interconnectedness, and finally pray for the healing of the earth and the vulnerable, those that are impacted more than we are by climate change. Question, what practices can help us bridge the gap between knowing what is right for the planet and actually doing it in our daily lives. And part of that is education within the community, education for within ourselves and within the community, leading towards interconnectedness. And part of that is spiritual awakening, listening to the whispers of God, in awakening our spirit on this issue. And I'll come back to that issue in a few slides. Um, what spiritual practices can change the stamina of our environmental activism? And I offer lamentations and listening as a starting point, which leads to resilience, hope, and actions. And I'll speak to all of those elements in the next few slides. Um, Lamentations, the book of Lamentations offers some wisdom in this climate crisis. And I offer a few quotes from Lamentations, and it leads us into a spiritual mode of thinking about the climate crisis. Bitterly she weeps at night, tears are on her cheeks. Pour out your heart like water in the presence of the Lord, and restore us to yourself, Lord, that we may return, renew our days as of old. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Those lead me to hope and action. I recently participated in a Lamentations event at Bellarmine Chapel, and I was very moved by the actions that were asked of us on tears and light. Regarding tears, there was a basin of water, and we were asked to come up to the basin and dip our hands in the water and let the water drip from our hands down back into the basin. And that represents the tears of our eco grief. That represents the tears that we are experiencing, and to let it flow. And then the light, we're asked to light a candle and allow the light to show the way, and to be the light through our presence and our actions. I felt this exercise not only was a metaphor, but a strong experience within me, a spiritual experience within me. A spiritual practice I offer is listening to the whispers of God. Um, and from First Kings, after the wind, earthquake, and fire came a gentle whisper. And then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And so, questions to consider. What if God is always whispering and we may not be hearing it? What if we are just not attuned to hear the gentle whispering voice? Could it be that this journey of struggle, hardship, disorientation, and despair is about getting us to the place where we could hear the whisper of God? Spiritual practice of hope through faith. Hope through faith requires looking through a different set of lenses. Hope is a feeling of expectation for something to happen. Hope through faith is intrinsically linked to action. And hope also requires collective action, working together towards a common goal, that interconnectedness again. Reaching for a fossil fuel free world will require transformative change through hope and action. And speaking of hope and action, hope is taking action. To trust in a better future requires hope and action paired together through individual actions of ourselves and through collective actions collectively together as we pair together. A quote from Greta Thunberg that I very much enjoy. We can no longer let the people in power decide what hope is. Hope is not passive. Hope is not blah, blah, blah. Hope is telling the truth. Hope is taking action. And I take to heart that message there. Spiritual practice of ecological living And we cultivate a deep connection with nature. And I enjoy walks in the parks, the city parks, the county parks. I live close to Mount Airy, and I enjoy Mount Airy. Explore ecological spirituality and deep ecology. Embrace transformative practices and seek alternative perspectives. And as a resource on these four topics, Becca has put together a toolkit that will be sent to all of you. And it has some ideas to explore ecological living in different ways as a way to being rooted in interconnection with the universe. A few quotes that I wish to leave you with as for inspiration. Um, this one from Pope Francis. We have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice and debates on the environment so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. A quote from the Holy Quorum. The true servants of the most compassionate are those who walk on the earth humbly. And a quote from the Dalai Lama. When we harm the earth, we harm ourselves. And from Thich Nhat Hanh, we and the earth are one. And these quotes resonate within me as I wrote my book. I have a chapter on do no harm, the precautionary principle. And part of walking lightly on this earth and reversing the damage being done by climate change requires us to really look at the concept of doing no harm to God's creation. And I conclude with this slide, and just promoting my book. And some of this PowerPoint came from the book, and some from my conversations with Becca. And I offer you Becca's toolkit as something to follow up from this presentation. And that concludes my presentation. And I welcome questions and conversation.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to ask a question. If any thoughts have triggered in your mind hearing what Bob has said, please share them with us.
Now, this is my favorite part of the presentation, so speak up.
Mimi has her hand up.
Go ahead, Mimi.
You can unmute yourself, Mimi.
All right. So today, I read from a eco group called Signal that apparently our fearless leaders in Columbus at the Ohio Siting Board have decided against a solar project that's been in the works for 7 years in Morrow, Ohio. I am reading David Pepper's Laboratories of Autocracy, which is quite eye-opening. And it's absolutely mind-boggling to me that our state house has that much power over our personal communities. And that nobody recognized that, I think, until ALEC got their greedy little paws into our state house and started basically buying a lot of our. So, any thoughts on what we can do to deal
Yes,
with that?
I'm glad you brought that up. I have solar on my rooftop of my house, and I enjoy free electricity 9 months out of the year. So I, I enjoy that action that I took about 10 years ago. Um, the the rejection in Morrow, Ohio that you referenced, there are 6 community solar projects that have been rejected by that commission that you're
Mm-hmm.
speaking of. So this is the latest one. And the trend basically is to build more gas and coal facilities and to discourage renewable energies. And that's our state house. That's the commissions from our state house as well as the state legislature. And most recently, there was an announcement that Piketon, Ohio, in the Appalachian region of Ohio, will host a large AI facility that will consume a lot of power, and paired with that is a gas-fired energy facility to power that AI facility.
Mhm.
Again, burning gas, creating methane and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So I see a lot of these actions, and I fear that we're going backwards. We're going the wrong direction.
We are going backwards.
Yeah, and there was a wonderful article in the Cincinnati Enquirer about a week ago that demonstrated that Kentucky has generated doubled the amount of solar power systems in the state of Kentucky in the past year. And the jobs created by renewable energies in Kentucky outnumber by far the jobs created
Right.
by coal and gas.
I mean,
So
it's amazing to me all the lies we're being told.
so I feel we're on the right path. We're on the right. We collectively on this call are working in the right direction. Our state legislatures are not listening, and so I feel, in answer to your question, what can we do? I strongly feel we need to replace our state legislature with people that
Agreed.
listen to us, and that involves getting politically involved. I'm not necessarily placing this conversation in the political world, but we live in a political sphere that says that we need our representatives to speak what the people
For
want.
us.
Us, we the people. And so I strongly encourage the answer to that question of participating in our elections and promoting good quality candidates to run for the state legislature, as well as the county commissions, as well as the city councils. We in a sense, I feel the national drive to address this issue is gone. It's dried up, but we can work on our local level.
Hmm.
We can really push the message, and even even when there is no election, showing up to a county commissioner's office meeting and stating your position, or going up to Columbus and stating your position at a solar power siting committee meeting, and being a voice, a positive voice for the future.
Is there anything that can be done about Alec?
I don't. It's appointed through the governor. It's appointed through the
But
legislature.
Alec is buying our representatives.
Oh, I see what you mean. That Alec. Okay, that um, one position that citizens could do through a citizens petition is to outlaw outside influences on our state legislature. Outlaw the I see state laws being developed in Columbus that are exactly identical laws that were passed in Texas and Florida, and
Yep.
and these groups like ALEC are shopping these laws around the country.
Yep.
And what we need to do is tell our legislatures that this is a wrongful pattern that's not listening to the public. It's listening to outside consultants and outside
Yeah.
agencies, and we need to put a stop to it. And part of that pathway might be a citizen petition on the ballot. That might be the
Yeah.
pathway.
Yeah.
Bob, there are a couple of hands up. Deborah has her hand up for some time, and then after her, Bill can go.
Okay, go for it, Deborah.
Um, Bob, thank you very much. I really appreciate your sharing some of the spiritual practices because I think this is not just a head thing, but it's a heart change
Yes.
and it's a paradigm shift we need. And I'm wondering, I really like what you said about whispers because I think we've had to shut down a lot of our connections because of living in this fast-paced culture. I wondered, I know Becca was mentioning your grandfather, but have you had other whispers about, writing this book or doing, what else have you felt or heard?
Yeah, good question. One of the things before I wrote the book, I read another book, and I can't find it. I've got hundreds of books in this room, and I can't find the book I'm looking for right now. And it speaks to the whispers of God. It was I don't remember the author, but it struck me as I read that book, that slowing down and not forcing our opinion in our prayer life and listening to the whispers can redirect us towards better answers. Not answers that our head tells us, but that, like you said, our heart and our spirit can guide us in a better way. And I did write some of that into my book, but that was something that was influential to me, prior to starting to write my book. And some of the conversations I had with my grandfather, as when I was what I called my turbulent teenage years, it instructed me on care for the earth. And I see that in some of our faith-based documents, of care for the earth as well too. And so I look at those documents for an uplift, away from my eco grief.
Thank you, Bob. Bill, if you still want to ask a question, please go ahead. I think maybe he dropped off.
Oh, maybe he'll rejoin us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to share some thoughts? Have a
Joanne
question?
has her hand up.
Well, thank you both, Bob and Becca, for this lovely presentation and opening our hearts to taking care of the planet, not just being left brain, but also right brain, if you can want to look at it that way. I want to, perhaps I can update our website. If you go to the toolkit at the top of the website, there's a box that says toolkit, and then you'll get to 6 boxes, and one says funding. And if you click on the funding box, there's one on resources. And there are about 4 or 5 pages giving resources from various faiths. They will provide, somebody's not muted or they're shuffling paper on their screen. If you give, they have certificates, they have help for green teams, they help, for help making your house of worship more sustainable. And you brought that up in your slides, so I want just to mention that we have a long list of, and some of yours are not included in that list, Bob. So I would like some help on updating that list. And the other thing I want to take the opportunity, perhaps Becca has already planned, is that April 11th, we have an in-person meeting, and some of this conversation can come up again with houses of worship. Like, how can you bring your religious community together to help them take better care with intentionality, better care of the earth? So that discussion will be in person, and we have Mika Owens, who is running for Hamilton County Commissioner. So, but she has been an advocate for our community to care for the environment, very outspoken and very moving legislation forward. And so the other presenter will be John Talmadge, and he was one of the founders of the Green Team at Mount Auburn Church, and they are simply an exemplar case of what a small group of people can do to bring their religious community in line and in spiritual action in taking better care of the earth. So I hope you all show up. I'm sure if you're on our email list, and I think everybody is, that you've received a couple announcements, and so please RSVP so we know we'll have some light refreshments.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
a quick
Yeah.
response, but Bill has his hand up. But let me respond real quick to Joanne. I first want to thank Joanne for all her work for Faith Communities Go Green. She's done a lot of work over the years. But today's presentation on spiritual awakening and working our eco grief to a better position leads us to the concept of action. What type of action can we take? And Faith Community Go Green has a lot of actions that all of us can tie into. And that's the action format that I point my finger towards. I just had the pleasure of working with Faith Communities Go Green on an energy audit of our school. And it was a great experience and funded through a grant from the city of Cincinnati. So I thank Joanne and Becca for their work. And I know Bill had his hands up. He's back online here. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, Deborah was also in the middle of reacting, and she's my wife upstairs, and both of our computers went off. All the lights went off for a few seconds, and then came back on. It was very hard to get back in, and I see she still isn't back in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I don't
she
see her
is.
picture. Oh, is she? Okay, I didn't run it. I don't have all the faces on the screen here. Anyway, Deborah, are you there? Do you want to finish? Anything?
No, I'll listen to the recording.
Okay. Well, my comment, let's see. I'm a clinical psychologist for over 50 years, and I've been an ecotherapist for over 40 years, working with clients, giving workshops and retreats, bringing that focus also in with some of the clients I see in therapy. But I believe that I liked a lot of what you said, Bob. But one major difference is that I believe our most basic crisis with the earth is the biodiversity unraveling, or the Holocaust, the biodiversity Holocaust. And I just saw a video, again, I forgot all about before, by Eileen Crist, Crist. It was done about a year and a half ago. It's on YouTube. It's a little less than an hour. But Eileen Crist is one of the major world's experts on biodiversity loss, and her YouTube is called Climate Change Discourse and Its Dangerous Liabilities. By that, she means the focus on climate change as the main ecological problem we have on the earth. But biodiversity unraveling is happening at a great rate. If you look at the World Wildlife Fund's Living Planet report, it comes out every 2 years since 2000. So 2024 was the last one. They say that on the average, and they have huge numbers of references, and the next one will be out in the fall of this year, 2026, that show that average of 73% of the world's wildlife, the vertebrates in the water systems and on the land, have dropped that much in 50 years since 1970 across all the continents. There's a lot of variation among the continents, but she says most people aren't aware of the biodiversity Holocaust because we don't see it happening around us here, particularly in the United States or in Europe, but in the lesser developed countries, it's much more obvious, and it impacts climate a lot. It isn't just climate causing it, it's mainly human expansion.
Yeah.
But I do think that, as Charles Eisenstein says in his book, Climate, a New Story, and in his paper online, which is called Initiation into a Living Planet, he said, when you really look into it, it's really more of a biodiversity unraveling, but we can't see it. It's invisible to us because we're surrounded here by our wealth in North America. We've already bulldozed and logged and killed off a lot of our wild ecosystems and so forth. But to me, it implies a practice, a spiritual practice of communion with the natural world, of intimacy with the natural world, as hunter-gatherers have always had, the indigenous folks, which we all were. 9/10 of the time primates have been human. We were hunter-gatherers before agriculture. So I really think it can make a difference, because then if you realize the biodiversity loss is due to our lifestyles, more than just fossil fuel consumption and burning, it's due to our middle class lifestyles. And half of the world's population entered into a middle class level of consumption in 2018. That had never happened before. And anyway, what do you think, Bob? That's a lot. I tried to squeeze a lot in there, but I'll shut up now.
I'm glad you voiced all that, and I totally support what you just said. Biodiversity is underrated in the climate conversations, particularly in the newspapers and radio and TV. The media doesn't pay much attention to it. In my class, my climate change class at Xavier, I do have a bit of a conversation on biodiversity and loss of our species, numerous species. I don't know the numbers offhand. You probably know them, but it's the vertebrates, as you mentioned, the birds and the insects and the plants and everything is being affected. It's not just humans, and if we look at climate change as solely impacting humans, that's part of our egocentric view of life. We do need to look ecologically at all of creation. And I totally agree with what you were saying, Bill, that the biodiversity conversation really needs to be more prominent and part of our action plan.
Now, I really recommend that Eileen Christ YouTube from a year and a half ago to anyone who's interested.
I'll look that up. I have not seen it. I'll look that up.
Thank you, Bill. If you can send me the reference to this video that you talked about, I can put it in the toolkit.
Cool.
Because this is an evolving toolkit. If anyone today has resources that can be added to share with others, I can easily add it. CJ has her hand up.
You gonna give your email then, Becca?
You have my email. Deborah has it too.
Okay, I'll check.
This kind of goes along with what Bill was just saying in terms of the loss of biodiversity. But I think another issue that we are not particularly conscious of in this country is the loss of rainforests.
Yeah.
And what is happening to our climate as a result of the loss of rainforests.
Yeah, yeah. Think about Brazil. That it was the Amazon was known as the lungs of the earth, and there's so much destruction over there. But that's also happening in Germany. So some of the German forests are being deforested. It's happening in Canada.
It's happening in Africa.
Yeah, Africa. I'm thinking the boreal forests in Canada being destroyed for our toilet paper, thanks to Procter and Gamble. Our human practices are harming the earth. As Bill noted, it's not just climate change. It's human activities that are destroying creation.
I think you said it very clearly when you talked about the need to look again at our interconnectivity.
Yeah.
Because that's what we in this country simply do not recognize at all.
One thing I see in throughout my career and throughout my life is the thought, and it's in the science books as well. the separation of humans from nature, the separations of humans from the climate and the earth and all of nature. And that's such a myth. We are interconnected, whether we want to be or not. And it is part of the design for creation for all of us to be interconnected and not separated. And I think that was one of the early lessons I learned from my grandfather, and I respect that lesson.
I just came back from a trip to Africa and I was in several countries. And Kenya has totally eliminated plastic bags. You just
Yeah.
don't find them. They've gotten rid of them. I saw solar panels on a grass hut in some places.
That's fantastic.
In many places, in Zanzibar, many of the hotels now are running on solar power.
So that should be examples to our Ohio State legislature right there.
Mhm. Yes.
Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts to share before we wrap up the Q&A?
Maybe you couldn't see my hand.
Oh, sorry,
Hi.
Myra. I
Yeah,
couldn't.
no, it's okay.
Go ahead.
I have so many things I could bring up. Oh gosh. Okay, one thing I see missing in this Zoom group, and I don't mean to be ageist because I'm 63 now. Where's the young people? Everybody
Yeah.
appears to be over 50.
Yeah.
That sort of concerns me. And I'm wondering if it's because, there's the group, there are a lot of, fewer people are going to church now. The nuns, there's a lot of younger people. So is that maybe why we're not seeing them here in this group? Or because you all are primarily FCGG, you're sort of a faith-based group, right? Yeah. Is this just a fluke, or am I bringing up something do I have a point to
I
my
think
observation?
I think you have a very good point, and something that has been missing in this conversation. I'm glad you brought it forward. Um, Being interconnected and building community towards solutions on these issues does require all the generations, intergenerational, and it requires the thought patterns of all these generations. As that's what I enjoy when I teach at Xavier is teaching 18 to 23-year-olds, and they're so energetic, and they're very dedicated, and they're not tainted by the thought that they're not invincible, that they can't do anything. They do believe that they can make a difference. So that those younger generations do need to be part of our circles of communications and circles of conversation and education.
Wow.
So I'm glad you brought that forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been taking some courses in regenerative farming and
Yeah.
discovering about, carbon sequestration and carbon sink, and
Yeah.
there's just so much to learn. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Myra, there are two young people in our group, but they're just not on camera.
Oh,
One
okay.
of them is
Great.
one of the kids from my own family, Ben Crowder. He's in New York. He lives in New York now. But Ben, years ago, gave up eating meat purely out of care for the environment and care for creation. And the way he lives his life is very eco-friendly life. And I know Bamideli I met recently. He's a very young fellow. So Bami and Ben are both from the younger generation.
Good.
Yes.
And who's going to No Kings Saturday? Me. Any of y'all going to No Kings?
Yes.
That's a good action network right there. Voicing your
Yeah.
opinion on No King's Day. Yep.
Great. Good to be with y'all.
Can I make some answer to your question about where the young people are? In our congregation, there's a lot of young people, and they right now are putting their children to bed or helping them with homework, or it's a busy time, and it's hard to find time for them, but they really are engaged. What we did in our congregation is in the late spring, we do a weekend camping trip, and that brings out all the young people. And so we talk about loving nature and being interconnected with it. But we've been doing this now for 5 years, and every year we have over 30 campers, sometimes 36 campers, and children come from infants, all the way up. So there are. It's a wonderful intergenerational. The oldest campers are in their 80s, and the youngest are like 8 months. So if that's something in your congregation that you can find somebody interested in organizing it, it's cheap. It's, just you go to a state park and pitch a tent, and if you don't have a tent, you can rent tents or share tents, and it's just a great way to get people out. And if you don't do it as a camping trip, do it as a day. Let's have a day at the Winton Woods, Sharon Woods, or Big Bone Lick, and all these parks have wonderful educational and inspiring opportunities. And the young people do care. I'm finding the young people really do care.
So let's wrap up the Q&A session. And Bob, before we end today's program, I request you to send us all home with your final closing thoughts and wisdom, which will stay with us forever, inspiring us in our life's journey to making this transformation in our lives, where it is natural and effortless for us to live such a life where our thoughts, words, and actions are aligned with promoting harmony, love, and caring for our planet. But before you address the final question, Bob, I want to go over a few things with our audience, and I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Yes.
So all the friends who are gathered here today, please refer to the toolkit that my husband Fred has put in the chat a couple of times. And also, since you have registered for this program, and even those who couldn't make it will receive the toolkit in email from me, I will be including a recording of today's program in that toolkit. And if anyone sends me any resources that are related to this topic, I'll keep adding it. It's a Google folder that you'll be receiving. Also, please do attend our in-person program on April 11th, which Joanne mentioned. If your house of worship would like to begin or advance its journey towards sustainability, so if you can pass on this message to whoever is in the sustainability team in your church, this would be a very beneficial program for them. April being Earth Month, FCGG is registered as a team on Eco Challenge, which is a global platform for us to join in collective actions for a healthier and a more sustainable Mother Earth. So the link for you to join our team, I think, has been put in the chat by Fred. Did you put the Eco Challenge link in the... Okay. Yeah, just click on it and it'll take you straight to the Eco Challenge website, and you can join our team over there. And I'll also remember to put that link in the email I send you tomorrow. Also, FCGG will have booths at the Earth Festival at Washington Park on 19th April. It used to be in Blue Ash, in a park in Blue Ash all these years, but this year it's happening in the Washington Park, and we will be having a booth over there. And we are also having a booth at the Evergreen Presbyterian Church's Earth Festival on 25th April. So on both these dates in Earth Month, 19th April and 25th April, please attend the festival and check us out at our booths. We also have a bunch of great book club sessions that happen practically every month or almost every other month. And the next one is lined up coming up on 27th May. So if you keep in touch with us via subscribing to our announcements and newsletters, you should be receiving regular news on what FCGG is doing to try and inspire you to continue with your eco-friendly lifestyle. And in June, we have organized a family-friendly in-person event, which is a guided tour of the Gorman Heritage Farm. And it'll end with a potluck picnic. So save that date. You should be seeing that announcement soon through our newsletters and through our email announcements. I just wanted to give you a heads up that please keep that date. It's on 14th June, at the end of Climate Action Week in Cincinnati. So please register for these events, and if you're not already signed up to receiving our announcements and news, please do so. Fred has also provided you the link to stay connected with us on how you can sign up to receive announcements. I want to thank Fred for all his support today of posting so many things in the chat, so thank you. I also want to thank Joanne, our leader and co-chair of FCGG, for her unending hard work and support for all the programs we bring to you. So thank you, Joanne. I also want to acknowledge CJ, our co-chair of FCGG, who also supports us in as many ways as she can through Earth Connection, which is, she's the ED of Earth Connection. So thank you, CJ, for everything you also do to support FCGG. And thank you, the wonderful audience. But don't leave yet. We want to hear the final thoughts that Bob would like to share with us. So Bob, please go ahead and tell us, what should we go home with?
Thank you, Becca, and thank you all for participating. I have two thoughts to leave you with. One in my book in the appendix, Reflections. I note I note in detail the Earth Charter, and you can Google the Earth Charter as well, and it is a wonderful thought provoking document that hundreds of thousands of people have signed off on. And it leads me to that thought in my book on do no harm, honoring the precautionary principle of doing no harm. And that is a basic human value that I would encourage all of us to embrace. And finally, I am motivated and moved by the phrase "we are one," and that comes from Thich Nhat Hanh. We and the earth are one. When we think in a different format about the earth and about the nature and about our human relationships, and we think we are one together, we and the earth are one. I believe that moves us in the right direction. So those are the thoughts that I leave you with.
Thank you for those wonderful thoughts, Bob. And thank you once again for giving us your time today and for all the wisdom and knowledge you shared with us today. And friends, to you, I hope that you have found today's program meaningful and helpful. The more connected we feel to the natural world, the more likely we are to act as its guardians. This connection boosts our own well-being, helps our communities become more sustainable and resilient, and also builds a virtuous cycle of respect and conservation. As individuals and communities around the globe embrace nature, all of us, creation, will reap its collective benefit. On behalf of FCGG, we thank you, Bob, once again, and we thank you, our dear audience, for giving us your time and taking the interest in coming and listening to our program today. Thank you all so much. Good night.
Thank you, Bob and Becca.
Thank you. Bye-bye.